Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Carolyn, and in this video I'm going to be chatting with you about my top 10 eyeshadow palettes for winter for my personal collection. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just keep on watching. So I have my little helper here, Stella. She does not like to be held, but she wants to be on my lap all the time. So yeah, she wanted to be on my lap. And then here comes the other one. She's out of frame. I'll show her. This is my well-behaved. She's well-behaved. Much more well-behaved than her sister. This is Belle. Okay, anyway, back to the video that I haven't even started yet. It feels like I just filmed my top 10 eyeshadow palettes for fall and now we're heading into winter. But I saw Just Steph post about her winter eyeshadow palettes from her collection that she plans on using, and then my friend BrittanyRae posted her top 5 winter eyeshadow palettes. So it just inspired me to do my video of my winter eyeshadow palettes, and I will have both of their videos linked down below. I highly recommend checking out their channels if you haven't already. Both of them post a lot of fun eyeshadow palette content, just a lot of fun content in general. So I highly recommend checking both their channels out. Anyway, I have 10 eyeshadow palettes to talk about here, and these are 10 from my personal collection. I have around 30 eyeshadow palettes. So I have a good selection of eyeshadow palettes, but not as much as other people do to pick out their top 10. I feel like it kind of goes without saying that you can wear whatever makeup you want all year round. Makeup doesn't have a season. I just personally like kind of embracing the seasons with my eyeshadow palettes. Really, I love an excuse to talk about eyeshadow palettes, and I have fun kind of switching out my makeup collection with more seasonal appropriate, in quotations, palettes, because it's just fun for me. These are all kind of somewhat older palettes, so you may already have these, and if you don't, I'm not trying to persuade you to run out and get these. This is just a way for us to chat about eyeshadow palettes and a way to encourage you to shop your own stash for your winter eyeshadow palettes. Generally, I think of winter eyeshadow being kind of more cool toned, silvers, extra sparkly shades, blues. So that's kind of what I was thinking about when I chose these palettes. So that's enough rambling, and let's just get into it. So the first palette I have to talk about is the one I'm actually wearing now. It's the Odins Eye Alva palette. I don't think this is still available, but I think it's floating. You'd probably find it on Poshmark or something like that if you're really interested in it. This is somewhat new to me. This was sent to me from Misty, which I really appreciate. She decluttered it to me. The Hayleigh palette is a palette I have from Odins Eye that the formula is fantastic. This formula is not as good, but it's still pretty good. I like the shimmer formula. I think it's pretty good. I'm wearing a mixture of these two shimmers and this kind of topped over it. And the shimmer formula, most of these pick up really nicely with a brush. This one is kind of more of that Super Shock formula, so this picks up better more with your finger. But the matte formula isn't my all-time favorite. This shade is not good at all. Like that's my least favorite shade in the palette. But these other shades down here, like I used this one and this one today. I think these ones are pretty good. So I do enjoy this formula and this palette, which is not as much as the Hayleigh palette. But anyway, outside of these yellows, I feel like it is a very wintry palette because you have these cooler mauve tones, and the shimmers are very sparkly. So anyway, this is the first palette. And these are not in any particular order. These are I'm just pulling for them as I go along. The next palette I'm going to talk about is the Tiny Marvels palette from Sydney Grace in the collaboration with Thompson. And this one, when you open it up, it does kind of seem more spring. But to me, there's a lot of wintry feels with this palette. If you just kind of covered up this green shade, I feel like it's very appropriate for winter. And to me, this is an all year round palette. It goes well all year round. These mattes blend super easy. Somehow this palette can look really neutral even though it looks pretty colorful. With the formula on this, the shimmer formula is fantastic. However, I have to double prime my eyes and use a glitter primer for this palette, but it is worth it in my opinion because it's just so pretty. Like this scarab shade, yeah, that's gorgeous. So this is one of my favorite palettes, and it's worth it to me to kind of put in the extra work for this palette as far as prepping, and it's not even that much extra work, but I talked about it in my recent Get Ready With Me, how I use this palette. Anyway, if you have this palette, definitely pull it out this winter season, and it is still available if you're interested in it. But yeah, so that's this one. The next palette I have to show is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina palette. I know this was just in my top 10 eyeshadow palette picks for fall, but I feel like if you took away this shade, it's very wintry. So this had to be one of my choices. This is such a pretty palette. I love this palette. This is another one that Misty sent me. She decluttered it to me. So yeah, it's such a pretty palette, and I highly recommend pulling it out this winter. The next palette I have is sent to me by another one of my friends here on YouTube, Dev's Beauty Diary, the Melt MaryJane palette. I just have awesome friends that send me makeup that they don't want. So I really appreciate that. But anyway, so this is definitely more of those cool tones, kind of grungy vibe, cold weather. The shimmers on the ends are difficult to work with. They're not my favorite formula at all, but the rest of this palette I really enjoy. The mattes are really pretty and work well. These shimmers work pretty well. These middle shimmers work pretty well. These end ones are just very chunky and there's just a lot of fallout, but this is another palette where I think it's still worth the effort. The looks are really pretty. So this does take a little bit more effort, and it takes a little bit more time to put a look together, but in my opinion it's worth it for this palette. So yeah, that's the next palette. My dog is chewing on her bone pretty aggressively, so if you hear her, I'm sorry. But this is the Star Wars Colourpop palette. This is pretty new to me. I just got it when they relaunched it. I don't know if it's available still or not. Last time I checked it was, but that was a couple days ago. They said that they were releasing limited quantities, but I don't know. I never know with Colourpop when to take them seriously or not. But this palette is such a pretty palette, and I feel like it's good for fall going into winter. Now you have these really pretty Super Shock. This one, and this one are Super Shock formulas, and they're just super pretty. That was a really failed swatch. Okay. But they make super pretty topper shades. And I don't know if my camera's if my phone camera is focusing. And then you also get a silver and a gold. You get this shade, which is a very pretty shifty shade. But yeah, I got this for the packaging. If you see behind me, I have these three palettes from the Colourpop Star Wars collection, and so I had missed out on this the first time they launched it, and I thought it was going to be around longer because, you know, they kept other things around like the child palette for years, so I thought they would keep this around for longer. So I snatched it up right away when they relaunched it, and they said that, yeah, it's limited edition, limited quantities and stuff. So I didn't waste any time getting this one. And it was one where I got it for the packaging, but the palette itself I was very pleasantly surprised with. I had heard other people say that this was their favorite palette from the Star Wars line, from the Star Wars palettes from Colourpop. And it might be my favorite as well, because the special shade, like the Super Shocks, and then this shade here, really make this palette something special. And the color story is really nice as well, and I feel like it really fits the theme. So yeah, I'm really glad that I picked this up, and I will be pulling this one out this winter. This is the other Star Wars palette, the Darth Vader one. This one is also very like grungy, cool tones. This red, this Super Shock shadow here layers really nicely over the red, and it gives this very soft like berry shade, which I think is pretty for winter time or all year round, honestly. So this palette just gives those grungy, cool tones that are great for the winter time, and I'm really excited to use it this winter. The next palette is my BH Blueberry Muffin palette, and this one unfortunately isn't available anymore. You might be able to find it at TJ Maxx. I'm not sure. Poshmark, Mercari, those places probably have it as well. The packaging is very reflective, so I'm sorry about that. When I think of winter, I do think of these cool toned in the blues, so I couldn't do my top 10 winter eyeshadow palettes without including this one. This palette gives you all the blue tones you will need for the winter time, and the shimmer formula on this is fantastic. The BH formula is fantastic, and there is some versatility with this palette because you do get this kind of peachier shade. So you don't have to do just an all blue look with this palette, because you have this peachier shade, and then you have these two mattes for blending out, and they all kind of play nicely together with the other shadows in here. Like, I don't have any issues with things getting muddy and stuff like that. So yeah, this is just a pretty palette, very winter appropriate. So if you have this palette, I highly recommend pulling it out this winter. Another BH palette that I have to talk about is the Passion in Paris palette. I just watched a video of Hayleigh talking about how you can break these up in quads. I think it may have been her top 3 palettes in every category. I'm not sure, but you should definitely check out her channel if you haven't already, because she does a lot of great eyeshadow palette content. But she was mentioning breaking these up in quads. So this is a quad, this is a quad, this is a quad, this is a quad. If you don't really know what to do with it, which honestly I was kind of in that boat. So I'm gonna have to try that. But this definitely makes me think of winter holiday season, because you have these reds that are more burgundy reds or deeper reds, and then you have these blues, and you have this silver, gray silver shade, and this deep kind of forest green here. So yeah, this definitely has some winter vibes in my opinion. So this is one I am excited to be pulling out this winter. And then the next palette I have is the Colourpop. It's a princess thing with the Disney princesses. This one I did get for the packaging. I love the packaging. If you're new here and didn't know, I do collect eyeshadow palettes for packaging purposes, which I know is kind of weird, because I watch a lot of declutter videos, and a lot of people say, I got this for the packaging, I need to let it go. But I get things because of the packaging, and I don't declutter things with the special packaging. Anyway, this one, the packaging is very reflective, so I'm sorry about that. I don't really know what to do about that. This palette is a very easy palette to use, very beginner friendly. the row of transition shades, which I know people think this is a really boring palette, and it kind of is, but it gives you so many options for transition shades, and it really just lays it out nicely for you, in my opinion. And you just get, like, you have this silver, and if there's a silver in a palette, I just think of winter automatically. And then you have the gold, which makes me think of wintertime, holiday season. So, and then you have the champagne color and this off-white shimmer. So these will give you softer, well, you can deepen the looks out with this black here, but it's a sequin shade, but in my experience, the glitters don't really show up. It just kind of, it's supposed to help blend it easier. Supposedly, I don't really know if that works or not, but that's what I've heard. But if you don't use the black, it just gives you very soft looks. And I like that there is a black because you can deepen out any of the looks. And I just think this is a very pretty neutral palette. It's kind of a romantic palette. And I'm not disliked any looks that I've gotten with this palette. It's just a great neutral palette for me. So I had to include it in my top 10 winter eyeshadow palettes. And lastly is my Natasha Denona Love palette. And this is more February season than all of winter, although there's this silver, which I already said makes me think of winter, and then there's this shade. I can't seem to put a look together without using this shade. It's my favorite shade in the palette. So this, I actually, if you saw this was an older video kind of, but I did my entire eyeshadow palette collection and ranking video, and in that video, this palette, I bumped my table and it shattered. So, or this shade, and this shade had shattered. So I put together some, I frankened some shadows and put them in that spot. So this one, and this one are not totally original to this palette, but anyway, this is one of my favorite palettes, and I think it is another like romantic palette, and it will give you pretty much like pink or purple looks, but they are very pretty looks in my opinion, and this is definitely a perfect palette for February. So I also wanted to include it. It is also a favorite palette of mine, so I had to include it in my top 10. So anyway, that concludes my top 10 eyeshadow palette choices for winter. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Leave me a comment down below sharing what palettes you're excited to use this winter. If you have any of these palettes, let me know. If you agree with my choices or if you disagree, just let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and I will see you in the next video.